Hello and welcome to the show. So former Health Minister Thuens Botha is here. I know he's got a big portfolio, new things he's doing, things that he's doing in his business life, his personal life. And we decided to catch up after meeting when he was Minister. Always felt that he was a person of very genuine interest and someone that I found interesting myself in terms of the work he's done for society. So we decided to catch up. Welcome to the show, Thuens.
Thank you very much. Nice being here again.
Yes, of course.
Yeah.
So the last time we met, it was under a different umbrella altogether. You were doing things in a very stately manner, and now you're doing things in the way that you want to do them. But you still have one thing going, and that's you're still effecting that change. So we're going to talk about that. But let's start from the beginning.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Where are you at the moment?
Yeah, well, it's very interesting. I'm not wearing a suit anymore, as you can see. A bit more casual now. I miss my suit. Well, where I'm now is I'm back in my area of origin in the Southern Cape, in Riversdale, on the farm where I am busy with some game farming, which is just something I always wanted to do, and I've got now more time to do it. But I'm still very involved in business. I have still many interests in property development, which I've always had. So that is carrying on, but I have now also expanded interest in health issues or health business on the one hand, and also on the social component of it, where we assist the state to be able to do procedures on vulnerable patients for which the state hasn't got enough means to provide.
That's something very interesting. So the fact that you've came from the health aspect in terms of government and various other portfolios before that, is that what kind of drove you into this new project? Because when you were there in health, I found that it appeared to me that you were not the normal minister. And I've seen many ministers, with all due respect to the others, they go about just doing their job. But you were doing your job, really doing your job. So has that become part of you, the health aspect of things?
Yeah, definitely. The one thing I enjoyed most in politics in general and in health specific was the ability to really affect people's lives. You know, you have the power to do things for people or not. And that's why I went full out for it. And I really enjoyed it. The Department of Health and the health portfolio was an extremely large component. You know, we had 32,000 staff members, a budget of 16, 17 billion rand, 600 facilities, 2 million patient visits per year, you know, 80% of the population of the province is your clientele. And by doing the right things, you can really influence the outcome so much. Health and education are the two components or the two departments where you've got provincial powers that you can really use. And it's also the two biggest budgets. So by doing things in those two departments, you affect 80% of the budget, but you also affect 80% of the population with health and education. So I enjoyed health extremely. And for me it was a challenge to bring policy, implement procedures and measures, and motivate people to really do things that has got a direct influence and effect on the patient sitting in the facility.
Of course, and health is a big thing because when people don't feel well, you can do whatever you want to do.
Yeah.
You can have all the money you want to, you can have all the food you want to, but when your health is not in order, it really goes deep with people. And it affects many things.
Oh, yes.
So it's a very primary aspect of people's existence that needs to be attended to. So I want to just regress for a minute and go a bit back. I note that this very community involvement and when people get involved with health, it also means that they have a very conscious aspect to themselves and they have a very compassionate aspect to themselves. People don't generally get in health for reasons only to make business, but at the same time they have an inclination to assist and help, and that's why you're in health. Where does that all come from? Is that something that roots out of your childhood, and then that may be coupled with the fact that you were in health itself?
Generally speaking, from a political point of view and a humanitarian point of view, I think it's very exciting, and I'm very privileged to live in the era immediately following on apartheid, where we have now for the first time ever, actually for the past 300, 400 years now, for the first time, a democracy, where everyone is equal and where everyone can get the same opportunity. And I think it's an enormous privilege to live in this era, where you can really have an effect on that. And you strive towards certain things which are very modern, and which you know should eventually be, but you've got to accept that there's a history that you've got to accommodate, and you've got to bring people onto a certain level, and that has always been for me very, very rewarding, you know. So I think it comes from the desire to have a normal South Africa as soon as possible, where we have a very unique nation, a very unique composition, unique in the world, which is our uniqueness, and it's our wealth. And if there's one thing that is the biggest asset in this country, it's not the beautiful nature that we have, it's not all the wonderful services we have, it's not the government or whatever, it's the people of this country. And I strongly and really believe in the people of this country. And I think it's an enormous privilege to live in the era where you can now do the things to change this history.
Of course. So I will still visit many other countries in the line of work that I do. And I always say that one sees these very picturesque views of various things around the world. And when you get there, it's fine. You have a look at all these monuments and all these nice things. But you soon come to realize that living in South Africa is a different thing. And it's perhaps you need to go back at some point. Yeah. Not because you're from there, but life in South Africa is fairly unique and different and easy compared to most other countries. We have our challenges, but it's easy compared to most countries.
You only appreciate the people of this country when you spend time outside. You know, then you really appreciate the people of this country.
So you've thrown your spear somewhere else.
Oh yes, yeah.
And so tell us about that.
Yeah.
Well, I am in health business now, where we establish certain health facilities, mainly in the day hospital sector, and in specific areas such as renal care and so on. So I'm involved in business on that side. I'm also involved in a very unique project, which is now the first medical bank in South Africa.
Medical bank.
Medical bank.
How do you define a medical bank? Sorry, I need to ask this question. Something new for me to understand.
The license from the Reserve Bank recently, December.
So it's actual.
It's a cooperative bank, so it belongs to its members.
Yes.
And it's only meant for and restricted to the health society. Yes. So any business in the health sector or any health professional can belong to this bank, and they buy shares into the bank. It's very minimal amount of shares, and it's owned by its managers or by its members. You're only allowed to have a 15% interest. That's the largest single interest you have, and that is what we have in the bank. Except for the fact that we also manage and started it. So it's in its baby shoes, but we believe that there is a huge future to do finance specific in the health sector. On the one hand, because it doesn't exist, and on the other hand, because there is a dire need for nurses, for doctors, and we believe that by identifying these students early, supporting them financially, we will be able to help South Africa eventually.
Of course.
I
think from a viewer perspective, and maybe from my own perspective, how do we understand the concept of a health bank? When we think about banks, we think about institutions that save our money and loan us money, for instance, or business.
It's an institution that will lend money.
So let's just talk about the actual practical approach of the bank itself.
Yeah, it'll be a financial institution. It's a deposit-taking institution. Okay. So you can invest into the bank, and there are already many investments in the bank. Obviously, investors have got their own agendas and their own conditions, but it's not a problem for us. We can either accommodate it or not. So there will be an investment component, and there will be a component of people that use our services. So we would typically do practice management and help new and young doctors to get into the business.
Okay, so a friend of mine, for example, in Durban recently started setting up a dental practice. And so I went out there just to have a look what he was doing.
Dental practices.
Yeah, no, of course. And I saw that it looked fairly expensive. And he told me it was expensive, but he didn't tell me how much it was. Is that the kind of thing
That is exactly the kind of thing that we do.
Okay.
Although we want to get involved earlier already,
Yes.
when he's still a student, provide student loan.
Okay. So it's from the student loan aspect?
And then specifically, there's a huge need. Older doctors can't sell their practices because the younger doctors hasn't got the means to buy it. So we want to do that matching. But then also health equipment is extremely expensive. And banks are reluctant, to do that. And so so we want to specialize in that. We are specializing in that. So we would do asset finance.
Do you think that there's a component of the bank that would later look at needs of the public, for example? Let's take let's go to the very basics in the public
That already exists. That already exists. Where the public can get money to have a specific operation, you can get a loan for that. So that exists in the market.
Okay.
So from the medical insurance point of view and medical finance point of view to the individual, there are many products.
Yes.
But in the health industry, on setting up a practice, buying a practice, having a running concern as a practice, selling your debtors,
Yes.
Collecting your money,
Yes.
practice management, and asset finance, there's a huge need for that.
Of course. So as we sit here and people are watching the program and they're either medical students, dental students, nursing students, perhaps physiotherapists, all those range of people, what's your message to them now? How do they approach you? What's the starting point? What's the criteria?
Well, the bank's name is Medico Bank, and we're busy establishing it now. We're busy with product development and so on, but it's already a going concern. It's already a going concern, but it will get momentum now very quickly. But the best is to contact Medico Bank. You will find it on the internet and so on.
Does this start talking to the student from a first year point of view or all the way?
Well, we're working with groups who represent a number of students. So we're not at the point where we start talking with individual patients yet, students yet. So we currently have black economic empowerment groups, for instance, who have a certain number of students that they want to support, and they want to use our means to do that. So we're involved in those type of projects. We're not yet at the point where we go from practice to practice. We speak currently to representative bodies of, let's say, family physicians or certain professions, So we're at that point. But it's early days, and we hope it will grow very quickly and exponentially.
Looking at international models around very similar approaches, have you looked at that, and what's the success of that?
Well, the success of cooperative banks, there's a huge success to cooperative banks, so they're sector-driven, that we've identified, and then we know that there is there's definitely a demand in the health industry to have specific finance models, such as you have in home loans or in asset finance for cars and vehicles and those things. There is a need for a specific market, for a specific health industry financial support and solutions.
The territory of operation at this point, is that only within the borders of South Africa? And
we have talks with the rest of Africa. We're specifically involved in talks in Botswana currently. So yes, no, it's definitely not only South Africa. We also have some European interest which we are exploring. South Africa will be the base, but yes, we would diversify in a more international way.
As a business, what do you see the future plans to be? Are you looking at further diversification in services? Are you looking at extending, not only from a territorial point of view, as you've mentioned, but are there other add-ons that might come along in what you're doing?
I think so. If you are in the financial industry, then there are obviously byproducts to it, such as I have mentioned, debtors collection and debtors management, and things as such. So specific student loans, for instance, and those type of things. So we would diversify. You get then insurance, you know, and many other things that you can attach to that, and it will mainly be done in partnership with existing companies. So our approach is to work with existing business. So we're fond of doing partnerships with people who are currently in the business. So for instance, a company that is currently involved in the management of many practices, we would typically speak to them and find an agreement and come on board and bring them on board, you know. So that's our nature.
Correct. Things going forward and just slightly moving away from our discussion, you're involved with this kind of thing, and you're involved with dealing with your farm and that sort of thing.
Well, there is one other area which I haven't mentioned,
yes,
and that is that there's the whole social component. Which
yes, and that's a component I actually want to bring in. Yeah. What are you doing on that front at the moment?
We established a company with the name of Spear Health, and Spear Health's sole purpose and aim is to support government to render services to vulnerable patients, and to extend the arm of government. We know...
It sounds like a very big and arduous task.
It is, yes. It is. What it is, in fact, is actually that coming from health, government, and governance, I know that the demand is increasing and the resources are decreasing. So we're heading for a disaster in public health care in the world. My solution to that is two things. The one is we've got to get the cooperation and commitment and responsibility between public and private sector closer. They've got to marry in solving this need. And maybe that's to a large extent what the national minister wants to achieve with NHI, although from a political perspective I just think there are easier and cheaper ways to achieve it than the NHI product itself. Correct. But to reach the same or have the same objective. The other issue is that, which I believe we can solve it, is to create wellness. To create wellness, we need people to become just more responsible about their own health. But it's an enormous task.
Correct, yeah. But when you talk about wellness, you're also talking about change in lifestyles, understanding your own lifestyle. Correct, yes. And that's even a bigger task.
It's a bigger task. It's a bigger task, and I just haven't got the means to do it.
It's education that's involved.
It's education. It is comprehensive. Yeah. It is the whole government. I mean, to create wellness has got to do with everything. It's got to do with everything. It's got to do with crime, economic development, transport, opportunities, you know, education. That is all involved in creating a more well society. I drove that component very strongly when I was in the public, in the ministry, together with this partnership with the private sector. But it is the partnership with the private sector which I continue with now after my office, after I left office. And for that purpose we created Spear Health. So what Spear Health, what we do with Spear Health is we marry or partner the private sector to support the public sector. And for instance, we have now a project, just as an example, which we refer to as the joint project. Joint because we're joining forces with public and partner and public sector, and joints also because we're replacing joints.
Oh, interesting.
So we focus on very vulnerable patients who became immobile or not able to have a normal functional life. So we ask the government to identify those patients. Give us the priority list on 50 of them. Yes. Where we can, if we intervene with private sector support, we could really change the life of that person.
That's very interesting.
And we're now busy with that project. Because we have done our first 4 operations, and it's unbelievable, man. Yes. It is so emotional to do that, you know.
You're saying that you talk about 50, but I just want to square this down to very brass tacks kind of thing. I know that I've been involved with, and my viewers know, with 1 or 2 patients, children that needed cochlear implants and stuff like that. So a couple of weeks ago I was in Canal Walk, and the parents bumped into me after 10 years. I did this when I was with SABC, and I forgot all about them. We raised money with SABC at the time, and I spearheaded this campaign for the cochlear implant. At that time, I think it was about 200,000 already, 10 years ago. And we managed to get the money. This boy is doing well. And his parents said they're bringing him onto the show soon, after 10 years. I've seen him when he was the site. I remember them bringing him onto the show at the site. But they said he's a grown man now. But his mother said one thing to me, and I don't want to say this out of any pride aspect, but I'm saying it from an exemplary point of view. And she said that, you know, that month changed his life. When we raised the money and he's living a normal life, he would not have had a normal life. And it's that kind of thing that you want to see. And it's effectively the one thing that we come down to. You say 50 people, but I know that if you only go out and you can change the life of one person, and that person gets up better in the morning, is able to go to work and live a normal life, your job's actually done.
Well, you see, so you're right. And if you help one person, it's got an effect on 50 people.
Correct.
So if you do 50, it's 50 times 50. But you're creating an opportunity for someone who is entitled to that service. But it can't be rendered because the state has got limitations. So now we get private money, private support through our company, and we facilitate this in the state hospital, and we change the life of a person extremely. So we had the first 4 patients we did. It was so emotional when we saw them afterwards, you know. Now they can walk. The one guy couldn't walk for 40 years.
That is really serious.
Or he couldn't walk without pain for 40 years.
Correct, yes.
He couldn't have a normal functioning life.
Correct. And there was a solution, but the solution was out of his reach.
Out of reach. And what is it? 40,000 and a patient made a difference.
Correct, yes. So in medical terms, it's not a lot of money, but for that guy, that's all the money in the world. Correct, yes.
Now, let me. That's only joints. Let me reflect to things such as renal failure,
which has become a big challenge.
Well, it's an increasing demand, and it's a lifestyle disease. So wellness should address it in any case. But you know, it's a death sentence.
Correct.
Unless you have the means to be able to be treated. The treatment is there. It's just unaffordable, and the state has got its limitations. So I don't want to exaggerate, but thousands of people are dying.
No, we know.
Because there are no means.
We know about this.
Now, we want to get involved in that now as well. That's our next aim.
Correct. So is the aim there not to continually paying for dialysis, but rather to set up dialysis clinics that's able to attend to these patients? Both of them.
So we want to intervene in keeping people alive, but we also want to intervene in preventing them from becoming ill or getting this disease.
A particular lady that pops in here at TV all the time, she's on dialysis every couple of days for 4 or 5 hours at a time. And so we know when to phone her, when not to phone her, that sort of thing, because she's either sitting on those machines with a fistula popped in there and, you know, doing the thing.
And if she don't do it, she'll die in 14 days.
Yes, correct. And here's the funny thing, I ask her all the time. Whenever I see her and she comes in here, I tend to not worry about the little issues that I have, because I think to myself, how is it that someone needs to sit with this thing for 4 to 5 hours? And
3 times a week.
Yeah.
It changes your whole life. It changes your whole life. Someone else got to go and get the kids from school. You can't have a normal day job again anymore. You've got to move close to one of those facilities. It changes your whole life.
Correct. So, and then without it, obviously, you die.
You die.
The interesting thing, Theuns, is that if we look at this kind of situations where you're effecting that type of change per person, and you're going along doing all of that, the doctors that are involved with your other organizations, the bank, for example, do they come to the table with regards to offering the service at a reduced rate to try and facilitate? Because we know that, and I say this very frankly, one part of the job is medication. The cost is medication. The other one is facility, and then perhaps the expertise itself. And the expertise might be the one that might be slightly variable Is that possible?
We're not doing any social work yet through the bank, so that just to reply to that, we're still busy just establishing the bank, so we'll get to that, to the social responsibility of that. In the meantime, I'm working very closely with the private sector, be it big companies giving money, be it other health institutions giving services or means or products, or individual surgeons making themselves available. There's an array of support.
So the support is there from saying, I'm not charging 10,000 rand.
It's unbelievable how willing the business community in general and the health practitioners in particular are to support the state. The problem is, however, it's very difficult for the state to accommodate these things. Now, I've got the privilege of having the experience from both ways. I understand the limitations and the dangers and the problems and the hierarchy and I understand everything through the state. It's not easy to do that. But in the Department of Health, we have now established, when I was there, the business development unit. We've got a very active foundation, health foundation. We've established all those structures to be able to support this. So the Department of Health in the Western Cape is geared to do this. I drove it personally very strong when I was there, and every individual that would take office has got his or her own things that he would drive very strongly. So I can't expect that my successor should do the same. She's now involved in other things. She's got her own line of interest and so on. So I can't expect her to carry on with what I did in this regard. And that's why I took up the challenge now when I left office, to keep supporting the state by creating these transactions or these projects. And I hope it will really get momentum. And the nice thing is the structure in the government is now there. We've got the business development unit, we've got the health foundation, we've got the Red Cross Children's Trust, we have the public health, private health forum. So the structure is there to do it. If you would go and do this now in Gauteng, it would be very difficult to do it.
Correct.
Very difficult, bureaucratic. Very, very, very difficult to do it. But in the Western Cape, it's possible to do it because I've been on that side.
Correct.
The challenging thing is that companies are already committed to a large extent to certain projects in advance. So your first year or two to get into the sector is very difficult because you work with set commitments.
Correct.
So we actually working with the smaller money now and whatever was left on their budgets, But we believe that we would get into momentum and provide proper
individual input in terms of, I know that you're talking about business and then you're talking about government. What if there were individuals around that said, you know what, all my life I've worked, I've made $1 billion and I want to be a philanthropist. Can they get involved?
Yeah, they can get involved. Both companies and individuals, whether it be philanthropists or surgeons currently in business or in practice, we've got the means to do that. And there are interesting challenges,
It's all about making that change.
It's all about making change. Let me give you an example. We're busy now in the early days now of a project for the Red Cross Children's Hospital where they need a certain radiology speciality. We believe that we're going to be able to have a successful project around that so that at least one or two registrars would be able to be trained to fulfill that profession. It's not possible for the state currently to do it, but we think we would be able to provide all the means to the state to be able to do it.
Of course.
So it's a small thing, but if you, I can't remember the exact speciality now, what it is, but all I know there are like 4 of them in the country, and you need 40 of them. So every 1 or 2 people that you train would make an enormous difference to the lives of many children.
And so we're going to have quite a bit of the details up on screen so that people can contact the organizations that you're involved with. We want to say thank you for visiting. We want to have you back soon and continually visit us and tell us what's been happening, so that we can inform the public and tell them this is where we're at and this is where we need to go. From a Deen TV perspective and from my show, we'll also see where is it possible for us to contribute, whether it's our airspace and our airtime, to make sure that the message actually goes out there to the people that it needs to go to.
Thank you very much for that. I really appreciate it. It's interviews like this that that bring new donors, and you know, people hear from this about this from interviews like this and so on. So we're desperately inviting people to come on board. We've got all the means and the ability to be able to distribute the resources. We have done our successful projects, and we have opened the way to do some more. So we invite people to join us.
Thank you. Former Minister of Health, Thuens Botha, and you now heard about all the projects that they're involved with. The one is very interesting, and what I find is an important component is the fact that there is a certain group of people in this world that can only do what they need to do by your support. So if you are a corporate, if you work for a corporate, go to your bosses and tell them to get involved. If you are the corporate, you know you should be involved. If you're an individual and have some money to spare, you can get involved. The details on the screen. Thank you for joining us. Goodbye.